Hi, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second in the series of the Blevins Franks Expat Chapter, the Blevins Franks podcast where we seek answers to the questions you probably didn't even know to ask. So, after years in the waiting, the French government has finally ratified Brussels 4 for British expatriates living in France. The French government ratified the rules years and years ago now, but then changed them in 2021. Due to forced heirship laws, and therefore the election to use a foreign will became extinct for British nationals. So, Tom, can we start with a little bit of background? What is Brussels 4?
All right, I'll try and give you the abridged version of this. So, back in 2015, there was a piece of European legislation which became known as Brussels 4. And at the time, it was a groundbreaking piece of legislation, because what it did is it enabled people to elect for the law of their nationality. So if you're a British national, you can elect for, say, the law of England and Wales to apply to inheritance, rather than having to go by the French succession rules. And the advantage of that was that the French succession rules are very prescriptive. If you've got children, then they are generally considered to be your protected heirs, and by default, you can't disinherit them, which could be very disadvantageous for a surviving spouse. Now, what Brussels 4 came in and did was it allowed people to do away with that and say that actually I would like my assets to go exactly as I have decreed under an English will, thereby bypassing the forced heirship rules. And it was very widely used almost immediately. We have lots of clients over the years who've been using the Brussels 4 regulation. What I will say is it's not necessarily as straightforward and as simple as you might initially think. So I'll pass back to you on that one, Mark.
So, James, why did France go against the European Commission over this matter in 2021?
Yeah, I mean, they'll try and protect their own forced heirship rules. So as Tom just said, with France, we have these forced heirship rules by where they try and force the succession or the flow of money down the bloodline. So with the Brussels 4 coming into effect, where you can use your home country rules, and the UK, you can leave the money to who you want. So that goes against what France are trying to do here. So that's what they're looking to do. The problem is really that the French rules have tried to override European rules, and normally European rules would trump this country specific. So it was just a matter of time for someone with enough money or enough kind of a desire to overturn the decision to take it to the European court, which is what's now happened. And we've had a recent ruling which France have now had to come and counter.
Well, James, just to carry on, this wasn't anything to do with Brexit. It was more to do with Sharia law, yeah?
Yes, nothing to do with Brexit at all. Yeah, so it's just protecting effectively the children to be treated equally, which is, I believe, quite a big problem in France, and making sure it doesn't just go down one kind of gender, but actually it's split equally between the line.
Okay. Tom, this is a bit of a fudge, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose you could say that. Yeah, it's the idea was that France was not happy with people electing for, say, English law, because they were able to disinherit their kids. Now that they've been challenged, the French authorities are saying, well, actually, we think there might be an element of protected heirship in England and Wales, and therefore we are happy to allow people to pass their assets in accordance with English law. So yeah, it's taken a long time to get there, but we're now in a position where we're actually, if you've got an English will and that's how you want your assets to be distributed, you can now do that under this Brussels 4 regulation. So we're kind of back to where we were 10 or 11 years ago when the European law, the Brussels 4, was announced.
But James, British expats still need to be a bit wary of this, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely need to be abreast of what's going on and how that impacts your particular situation. I mean, as Tom just said, going back 11 years, we're kind of reset to that kind of situation when Brussels 4 came in. People have done various things over that intervening period to kind of navigate these rules as much as they can to have money flow in line with their wishes. So we need to revisit these kind of situations and see, right, well, what have you stated in your will? How is your assets being distributed on death? And how does that interact with these new rules? So yeah, everyone should be looking into this and taking note.
So Tom, how does this now fit in with the new domicile residency rules in the UK?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the rules changed fairly recently in the UK. So instead of having a system of domicile, UK inheritance rules or UK inheritance tax is based on where you've been resident for the last 10 years. So if you've been resident in the UK for the past 10 years and then you move to another country, what normally happens is that you're still on the hook for inheritance tax for a further 10 years following your departure. Now, that normally isn't true for people moving to France because there's a provision under the treaty that says that actually it's French succession tax that applies, not UK inheritance tax. But people need to be careful here because if you're moving to France and you decide to make use of the Brussels 4 regulation and elect for an English will to apply in your situation, then actually there's a school of thought and there's some legal opinion that says that you will open the door to actually allowing UK inheritance tax to apply to your situation. So if you move here, elect for the Brussels 4 regulation, elect for an English will, and then you die within 10 years, potentially your full estate, your global estate, could be taxable under the UK rules at up to 40%. So this is an area where we would generally suggest that people take some specialist advice, and that's where we come in. We're equipped to be able to deal with those type of questions and those situations.
So Tom, so if we've done and created specialist advice, or any of the listeners have done something which assists them from a French succession tax point of view, electing to use Brussels 4 could really completely disable all those planning.
It could, yeah, it could nullify any of the advantages of what they think they've put in place. So that's why, and I'm sure we'll get onto this, that Brussels 4 is not necessarily the one size fits all. It's not a fix for every situation.
Okay, so James, so it isn't simple. It's not a one fit all solution.
Well, nothing in France is a one-fit-all solution, isn't it? We've all lived here long enough to understand it's a pretty challenging place to kind of sort things out. But especially from a finance point of view, it depends on your family situation, what you want to happen to your assets. So you really need to look at your own situation and see what goes on. I mean, one thing I said before is people did things to get around the kind of forced heirship rules previously. And one of those things was to use UK law. Well, actually now with what Tom's just said, with potentially electing to use UK law gives you a UK inheritance tax liability, and the flexibility now that we can do more planning on the French side with a French will, it might be time for not everyone, but some people to revisit the wills and use a French solution rather than the UK wills that they've put in place. But again, it depends on what you're trying to do, how your assets are structured. That would impact where you go with it and how you should structure your affairs. So getting advice is really quite critical.
I think the summary to all that is that if people think that this is just the result and that's all they need to do, just make an election, which you obviously have to write a UK will as well to make sure that you can adhere to these new rules. It isn't a one-stop solution.
Not at all.
Okay, all right, that's good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for the second issue of the Expat Chapter. Next week we'll get into another subject, but I think that we need to take this on maybe one stage further and develop it, because obviously we've left a few loose ends here. So maybe next week we'll uncover a little bit more information about succession and inheritance. So until then, thank you very much for joining us. Subscribe, like, whatever you do with podcasts these days. I'll get into this as we get further on in these, and look forward to speaking to you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.